gave it to her, and she didn't want it in her house because of the violence that it represented. And so when she came back, she gave it to the minister, and he thought it would be good to put it in the church, you know, and he placed a genuflector in front of it, and he found this piece of wood in the woods. It had this like flame-like quality to it, this sculptural quality, and hung it there. And at the time, I wanted to do a portrait of him, you know, some sort of a conceptual portrait. So we talked about this piece because it was brand new, and so he agreed to photograph, to be photographed, and we just tried a lot of ideas. And he remarked that he had a cloak that he wears for funerals, and it has a hood on it. So I said, oh boy, that sounds like a good visual, you know. And so that's how this image came. And well, I did some of him standing, but then he knelt down on that thing and just kind of hung out over it, and you know, that's how that happened. And that stayed in the church for a long time, probably about a year. You know, I don't know if it's still up, but he's not the minister there. He had some serious health problems, so they had to replace him. But that's how, you know, that's how that piece happened.
Thank you.
So, anything else? No? Okay.
The blue painting itself stands out to me, and I'm curious how you approached that.
That was one of the very first ones that I did as a painting, and that's I was drawing these thin lines on these exploratory drawings.
Mm-hmm.
So the mindset that I had was, well, I'm just going to try on canvas what I was doing in drawing. So I drew those white thin lines with a wax crayon, you know, and then you know, also it was the gesso that I used was black. So
really? Okay.
yeah, it was black gesso, which I think I'm going to experiment more with because I really like that. I like the way color comes off of it. And then after I drew in the shapes, and then I just started painting it. You know, I worked with a blue, and I liked the blue, and then you know, just started working with colors.
Great, interesting. Did you speak about the metallic gold one?
Yeah.
That was my obsession for. I mean, it became an obsession.
How long did it take you to
from when it started to when it was finished, about 3 weeks ago, it was like 4 years it took. Originally, actually, there's a varnish on it. Yeah.
I'm a textile person.
And it's dry.
Which one is it now?
Oh, down there, the 4 square ones, the bottom 2 are wet.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But
Drag me in case.
originally, the only 2 forms on here was this arch and this arch, and the painting was red and black, and it was just, you know, it was more like that. And I kept working on it, and it kept changing, and then one day I realized that, you know, these areas had to have something else. And I was trying to do drawing marks and painting brush strokes, and it just wasn't working. So then I kind of realized that if I were to put in forms that would complement these or work with these, you know, with the texture, it would become more of a sculptural piece. And so I put these in, and so I had to match the texture, which was really hard to do. So I use additives like acrylic mediums. You know, they have this heavy, thick gel, and I took Scott towels, actually Bounty, and tore them up into little shreds, and you know, soaked them in paint, and then applied it, you know, and shaped them. I just created shapes, And when it dried, then I just started going over it with paint. And it's interesting because, you know, when it was all gold, just gold, without anything in the valleys, it just looked too flat and pasty. So, and I wanted it to have, you know, these shadows underneath, or to bring out the texture. So I turned the painting upside down and painted the whole thing black. You know, I went over like hundreds of dollars worth of paint, and painted it black. And then when it dried, I turned it right side up, and then I started to put on thin coats of gold paint. So it would run down and wash over, but because the black was underneath, it would wash over the black without affecting the black.
If you have an out-of-town library card or need to apply for a new library card, please go to the circulation desk now. Cards will not be updated or issued after 4:30.
So that's how, you know, I felt I was able to bring out the texture. And I mixed a lot of wax with the gold paint too. Yeah, I mixed wax, and I also mixed the gold with some color, because the gold straight out of the tube looks really, you know, chintzy. And even the really expensive gold paint, the high quality, it still had an edge to it that I didn't like. I wanted it to look like real gold, you know, like it was a hunk of metal.
It makes it look heavy.
Yeah, it is. It's 42 pounds, believe me. Really? Yeah. Yeah. But the wax allowed these minute particles of mica that's in the gold paint. That's how you get metallic paints. There's mica in it. And then, but if you don't use anything up close, I mean, you can see these specks all over, and it looks cheap. So I mixed. I started working with cold wax, and then everything adhered. I used that plus turpentine. And I was able, you know, when it dried, it had this, it created a solidity that I really liked. Many coats of paint.
There's one question here. Is it like a crack running up?
Yeah, the crack is interesting because there was at least 20 times where I hated this painting. I absolutely hated it, and I hated the way it looked. And so one day, out of frustration, I took a hammer and chisel, and I just started going at it. You know, I decided I had thought about painting a line in it. So I said, I'm just going to just make a crack in it. And it was more out of anger than anything, you know. And then after it was done, I stood back and I thought it would be cool. So then the more I went over it in paint, the paint filled the channels. So it looks like it was like I don't know, cracked earth or cracked stones.
Yeah.
You know. Great. Yeah. So that's how that happened. It was more out of frustration than anything planned.
It sounds like when you start something, you're not sure exactly where you're going, because you start adding, you know, paper towels.
Yeah.
Just to create it more to your liking, but
Yeah.
it's like experimenting.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of
All the way
experimenting.
through.
A lot of constant experimenting. Yeah. So, you know, and those were just all done with paint and wax and a palette knife. You know, those four smaller ones. They were it's just straight paint. There's no additives except wax. But it was,
You said you're working with cold ones.
yeah, it's very common.
It's just you take it,
Yeah, you just mix it with
the paint itself.
Yeah, you can dilute it with turpentine as well, but so yeah, I mean it's an old medium that's been around a long time called coal wax. Okay?
Great.
All right.
Thank you. That was great. Very good.